So this section is about the Fidelity scale. And the reason I want to talk about it as we are laying the foundation for this work is part of the customized employment training through Utah State University includes the Discovery Fidelity scale being embedded throughout each of the modules. So I'm providing an overview now, and then through each of the modules, I present the Fidelity tenet and then the content that's related to that. So the goal is that by the end of this course, and then for you ongoing as a practitioner, offering discovery and customized employment, that you will know how to deliver and provide discovery to Fidelity. And so I want you to be familiar with the tenets as we go along. I also want you to have some background about how it happened. As you recall, I did indicate that customized employment is a promising practice, and the Fidelity scale and the background and the work that's being done right now is leading us to it being an evidence-based practice. So as we continue to score and review staging records, the ones that you're doing now, that strengthens that evidence base and knowing what it takes to deliver quality services and do discovery to Fidelity. So the history of doing discovery to Fidelity, or the development of the Fidelity scale, came from the Florida Developmental Disability Council. They awarded a project to the Center for Social Capital, which is the nonprofit arm of Griffin Hammis Associates, in 2016, to really just research and improve the practice of discovery. And, you know, it really, the initial research heavily relied on trainers and teachers from Griffin Hammis and Mark Gold and associates, and then practitioners within these customized employment projects that were in both Florida and California. That's where most of the work was done. And then after they developed it, they then contracted with Utah State University. Dr. Tim Reeson, who runs Utah State University's the Institute on Disability Research and Policy and Practice, our USED. He's my supervisor. They contracted with him to create a Delphi process to really increase consensus and the validity of the Fidelity tenets that were developed by these experts. So a panel of these experts across the country participated in this Delphi process to flesh out these tenets and what was important. So now DFS administrators across the country are being trained on this Fidelity scale to be able to then review discovery staging records like you're going to complete and other employment specialists have completed. And then, you know, being able to learn how to review with reliable and valid implementation. So we have started that process and trained, I believe, 12 Discovery Fidelity scale administrators in our state. And after this last round of employment specialists have completed their discovery staging records and planning meetings, we will then be reviewing the staging records that have been completed. So we are in Utah supporting this Fidelity scale effort. So as I mentioned, it's just a really key component of building capacity in our state and doing it to Fidelity and embedding those Fidelity elements into the training and technical assistance. The purpose behind that is if there are elements of the process as we go through and review that maybe aren't as clear or that people aren't scoring as well, that's an opportunity for me as an instructor to improve either my teaching strategies, provide more technical assistance, give more information. It's really a way to measure and figure out where you can make improvements, both as an educator or a trainer, and then as a practitioner. So you'll get feedback from those that review your staging records, as well as me as a trainer. So places that I can make improvement. So there are sections within the Fidelity scale that are broken down between systems and services. Systems is just that, right? So the VR funding structure, what an organization is made up of and how that looks in terms of the support an employment specialist gets. And while all of those things are very, very important, and the DFS administrators will review those, I am focusing the portion of this training on the services piece, because that is the part that you can control as an employment specialist, and the pieces that you're going to learn as you do discovery. And so the focus on services for the DFS include home and area visits, which is the home and neighborhood visit, discovery activities, informational interviews, the vocational profile, and then the employment plan. So there are, in the components of Discovery Fidelity have tenets for each particular component. So, and you'll see that demonstrated in the coming slides. The administrators review the staging record and determine where it falls within the scale from unacceptable to exemplary. And you'll see the breakdown of what those scores look like. So Fidelity descriptions are, unacceptable, which you lose a point. Acceptable is just kind of the best of the description circumstances. So you're basically, you look at what is in the record and then you say, this is the closest that matches to that and it's acceptable. A good or +2 is that the person that there's this part is present, and then there's also these additional elements, and we're going to go through all of those. Exemplary is all of those things are present, and then all of those scores are totaled at the end. For example, in my last course, the employment specialist did not complete any informational interviews. The rest of the staging record and the work that he did was pretty good, but for whatever reason, he had a really big challenge completing those informational interviews. And so that will be a place where he loses points in that section. So this is what it looks like in the Fidelity scale. So here is the first tenet of the home and neighborhood visit. So this is the home visit where you start at a person's home, and so basically unacceptable is if you're not able to do that and you have to arrange to meet somewhere else. And then acceptable is that you gather information about the person. Even better is you find out about the person's relationships. And then the very best is if you're able to capture unique quotes about the employment seeker or from the employment seeker and his or her family or friends. So it's really that level of depth that you're going to and capturing in that home visit. 2.2 is asking if you were able to have a conversational style during the interview with the employment seeker and the family members. This one's a tough one to gauge, because how do you measure that? And it's going to be reflective in the way that you write. And so we're going to talk about that, and we have a lot more time that we're going to spend on descriptive writing and the power of that and what are the important pieces to capture. What we don't want to see happen, which is unacceptable, is that you're just filling out forms and interrogating people. So we really want to be able to know that you're able to conversationally get the information that you need and still be gathering information about the relationships and gathering some of those quotes. We want to see and learn about the job seeker's personal space. What we surround ourselves with is often important to us. For example, right, Barry in the Christian catfish hole, that Bible was really important to him. And that was something that was considered in his, seeking employment. I don't know if you noticed Stephen, but he always has a tape measure on his belt. He's grown up hammering hammer toys, and it was something he's always done. And while that may not be visible in terms of a decoration or something on his wall, that might have been something that you took a picture of if you were doing discovery with Stephen. So thinking about trying to capture what's important to somebody. And we're going to do an exercise later to work on that. The next tenet is about the person's area in which they live. So when we say neighborhood, we're not just talking about the houses that are surrounding or the apartments around this person, not to say that everybody lives in a neighborhood. Right. Some people live in rural areas where there's not a lot around. That's okay. We just need to talk about that and kind of share what does this person's neighborhood or community look like? Is there a rec center that they spend time in? It's not even just the proximity. It's where are they spending time? Where do they have social capital? Where do they have relationships? And are you capturing that in your home visit and the narrative that you're writing? The next part of discovery, after you do the home visit and you're spending time in the community around them and figuring out where they spend time, you are finding out about, you're going to start identifying some familiar activities. It's a really great way to get to know someone. It's a really great way to get to learn how they learn best, whether it's cues, whether it's space that they need, whether it's visual learner, all the different kinds of things that we learn about people when we just spend time observing in places where they're comfortable and doing things that they're comfortable and confident in doing. So you're going to do a couple of those. This is asking for 3 familiar activities. So you're going to do 3 familiar activities and 3 unfamiliar activities. And that's going to get you a good score in terms of fidelity. It also is going to tell you a lot about a person. I don't want you to become so obsessed with getting a good score that you miss the really important pieces. The fidelity scale is there to ensure that you're delivering these practices. And the experts all said that, yes, this is what it takes. So you want to follow them, but you also don't want to just be checking boxes. It's just a guide for you. The next thing, after you do the familiar activities, you move on to activities that are less familiar in less familiar places. For example, if someone is really comfortable with making dinner for their family, could they, would they want to make dinner or organize a dinner party for some friends at one of their houses with them, or something, you could just kind of still go along those same lines, try something, a new menu or a new recipe, but just shake it up a little bit so that it's unfamiliar, but you're still kind of building on those tasks and interests that have already been identified. It's just an off the top example. But you want to be basing what you're wanting to base your unfamiliar activities on what you learned in the familiar activities. And you want to be able to demonstrate that you're doing that as you document these, as you're documenting the activities and how it goes and what you've observed. You're going to be talking about the potential vocational themes, what you're learning about this person. We'll talk more about what that means later. But right, these are the things that we're looking for in terms of fidelity and best practice. Informational interviews. It's really important to capture how you're going about informational interviews. Fidelity says you're doing at least 3 to 5 informational interviews. You're going to places without apparent job openings that are really matching who this job seeker is and where they're at their best and where you think these vocational themes are leading you. You don't want to just, in terms of, you don't want to be unacceptable as going and asking for a position at the phase where you're doing an informational interview. We are not asking for a job yet. We were asking for advice. So it's an important distinction to make sure you're not doing that at this phase. The next phase after informational interviews is really kind of summarizing and creating the vocational profile and the narrative review. This is something that you're going to share perhaps with the team at the planning meeting, certainly with the VR counselor, even though you're going to be sharing the whole record with that person. But it really is a way to just kind of condense and take all of the really important pieces that you've learned from the discovery process and frame those into this vocational profile. And you use this vocational profile to create and answer the question, who is this person? So you're making sure that the profile is written in a positive, affirming way, and that it's really clear about what the next steps are for job development to get that exemplary level. You want to be including videos or pictures or narrative descriptions, right? All the things that you've taken time gathering in the discovery process, you want to be able to find a place in the profile for that makes sense. Finally, we're looking at the planning meeting. And this is really the piece that connects discovery to job development. And so you want to demonstrate what that looks like. I've created a template for people to use in their customized employment planning meeting that will really meet these Fidelity expectations, identifying which team members are there, and including the lists and the business contacts and those opportunities, and how you're going to implement the plan and facilitate the next steps. So you're welcome to use this template, or you can model or create something yourself off of what I have. That's it for this section. Again, we'll be embedding each of these tenants into each of the modules, and you'll see that in the next section. So we'll keep going over them. I just wanted you to see them in their entirety, and I hope you'll take some time to read the Fidelity scale document that I sent in the introductory email.